The war had been raging for months. Earth's defenses were strong, but the Zinari Empire was stronger. Their ships were enormous, dark, and almost alive with power. Humanity had never faced an enemy like this before. Entire fleets had been destroyed in a single attack. Cities on distant colonies had been wiped out. And yet humans fought back, refusing to give up even when the odds seemed impossible. Ethan Cole had been part of one of the last human cruisers still in operation. He was a pilot, trained to fight, trained to survive. But even the best training could not have prepared him for the moment when the Zinari flagship appeared in orbit above their position. Its shadow fell across the cruiser, covering it in darkness. The weapons on his ship were no match for the alien vessel. The cruiser shook under the enemy's assault, alarms screaming, fire spreading through the corridors. Ethan ran through the ship, helping the crew wherever he could. He had seen death before, but nothing like this. People he had known for years were falling around him, some caught in explosions, others torn apart by alien energy weapons. His heart was pounding, but he did not stop. He could not stop. Someone had to survive. When the cruiser finally broke apart under the firepower, Ethan was thrown clear into space. His suit's emergency thrusters activated automatically, pushing him toward what he hoped was safety. But the Zinari were patient hunters. A tractor beam seized him, pulling him toward the alien flagship. He struggled, but it was useless. The humans on the ship had no chance against this kind of technology. Inside the Zinari ship, Ethan was stripped of his weapons and restrained. He had heard stories of how the aliens treated prisoners. Most of them never survived for more than a few days. Ethan's body was bruised and sore from the capture, but he refused to show fear. That would only make things worse. He straightened in the restraints and waited. Queen Avelra observed him from a high platform. She was taller than any human, with golden skin that seemed to shine even under artificial light. Her eyes were like liquid metal, cold and intelligent, and her presence commanded attention without effort. She had ruled the Zinari Empire for over 3 decades, crushing every opponent with ease. She had heard of the humans before. She had seen their worlds fall, their fleets burned. They were clever, she admitted, but weak. And now one of them stood before her. One single human, alone and captured. For the first time in her life, she felt something she could not name. A flicker of curiosity. The guards pushed Ethan forward. He did not stumble. He did not beg. He simply looked at the queen with steady eyes. Avelra studied him. Most beings she faced broke down immediately, either from fear or defiance. But this one was different. He did not fear her, and he did not obey her. "You are brave, human," Avelra said, her voice calm but commanding. "Or foolish. Which is it?" Ethan did not answer right away. He knew that anything he said could be used against him. But silence also made a statement. After a moment he finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "I am just a soldier. I do what I must to survive. You may call it brave. You may call it foolish. That is not for me to decide." Avelra tilted her head. His answer was unexpected. Most humans would have cried, begged, or shouted. But Ethan's calm, quiet strength intrigued her. She gestured for him to be released from the immediate restraints, keeping him under guard but allowing him to stand freely. "You are nothing to me," she said. "Just another human. Yet you look at me as if you were my equal. Why?" Ethan met her gaze. "Because I must. If I show fear, I give you power. If I give you power, I lose everything. You cannot take what I do not give." The queen did not respond. She studied him silently, the silence stretching between them like a weight. It was unusual for her to meet a being who made her pause. She had been trained to conquer, to destroy, to rule without question. But here was someone who refused to bend. Over the next few days, Ethan was placed in a secure cell aboard the flagship. He was given the bare minimum of food and water, but nothing to break him. The queen sent observers to watch him. They reported that he did not cry, he did not complain, and he did not give up. He ate sparingly, slept lightly, and always kept his eyes open. He was like a stone that refused to be moved. Avelra herself began to visit him. At first, it was simply to observe, to understand why this human did not break. She asked him questions about his world, about Earth, about humans in general. Most of her questions were practical, how humans fought, how they survived. But Ethan answered them all with simple honesty. He did not exaggerate, he did not lie, and he did not flinch. "You are a strange species," Avelra said during one visit. "You fight knowing that you will likely die. You resist knowing that you will lose. Why?" Ethan looked at her calmly, because living is worth fighting for. Even when death seems certain, we fight because we want to see another sunrise. We want to protect those we love. We want to exist. Even if we are small and weak, we matter. The Queen's expression remained neutral, but inside something shifted. No other being had ever said anything like this to her. The Zenari valued power above all else. Survival meant domination, and life was measured by strength. But this human measured life differently. This human valued it for something she could not yet name. During one of these sessions, Ethan told her about the ocean, about the blue water that stretched farther than the eye could see, the waves that danced in the sun, the sound of rain falling on the ground. He told her about mountains that reached the clouds, forests where sunlight barely touched the floor, and deserts where silence was louder than noise. Avelra listened, her golden eyes fixed on him. She had never known beauty like this. Her world was cold, metallic, efficient, and deadly, but through Ethan's words she could almost see it, almost feel it, almost understand why humans fought so fiercely to protect such fragile things. For the first time in decades, the Queen's mind began to question. She asked herself, what was strength? Was it only power, weapons, and conquest? Or could it be something else? Something quieter, something human? The guards whispered among themselves, confused by the Queen's behavior. She spent hours in the observation chamber talking to the human. Some began to worry that she had grown weak. Others thought she had found amusement in the human's presence. But none of them understood that something more profound was happening. The Queen was learning slowly that strength could exist in forms she had never considered. One day, a senior Zenari officer approached her. "Your Majesty," he said, "this human, he is nothing. We can end this now and move on. Your time spent with him serves no purpose. He is a prisoner. He should not influence your decisions." Avelra's gaze did not waver. "I am not here to end him," she said softly. "I am here to understand him." The officer's jaw tightened. "Understanding is a luxury we cannot afford. Our fleets are ready. Our targets await. The humans will fall, and if we continue this way, they will die before we learn what you seek." The Queen's golden eyes narrowed. "Then perhaps we will change the way we fight." Ethan, from his cell, sensed the tension. He did not speak, but he did not need to. The Queen's words carried a weight that not even he could ignore. For a long moment, the ship seemed to hold its breath. In that silence, a strange bond began to form. Not of friendship, not of loyalty, but of respect. The Queen had never respected a human before. She had never met a being who could withstand her power, her mind, and her will. But Ethan Cole had done all three without even raising his voice. As night fell on the distant stars, Avelra returned to her private chambers. She could not stop thinking about him. His calmness, his courage, his strange insistence that life mattered. She had faced thousands of enemies, conquered dozens of worlds, and yet none had made her feel this uncertainty. Ethan, lying on the hard floor of his cell, did not know that he had begun to change her. He had not come here to teach, to inspire, or to sway. He had come only to survive, and yet somehow, simply by being himself, he had started to rewrite the way the Queen saw the universe. Outside, the stars moved silently, watching the small human and the mighty Queen as their fates intertwined. One would think that nothing could happen between a prisoner and a ruler, between human and alien. And yet, the universe had begun a story that neither could yet understand. The war had not ended, the fleets still moved, and the universe still waited. But in a small chamber aboard the flagship Veilthra, a human soldier and an alien queen had begun a dialogue that might change everything. For the first time, Ethan did not fear the Queen. And for the first time, Avelra did not know what to feel when looking at the human who refused to break. And so the stage was set. The captive had become more than a prisoner. And the Queen, though she did not know it yet, would never see her empire or herself the same way again. Days passed aboard the Zenari flagship Veilthra, and the presence of the human prisoner continued to weigh on Queen Avelra's mind. Ethan Cole was no ordinary human. His calm and quiet strength seemed almost impossible to ignore. He did not beg. He did not cry. He did not act afraid, even when surrounded by the enormous alien guards and the cold metallic walls of the ship. Avelra, curious beyond her usual habit, decided to spend more time with him. She did not call it interrogation. She called it conversation, though most of her officers did not understand. To them, a human was only a resource to be studied or eliminated. To her, he had become something else. One morning, she arrived at the observation chamber where Ethan sat quietly, looking out through the energy field that separated him from the rest of the ship. The stars stretched endlessly before him, cold and distant. Avelra's golden eyes narrowed as she approached. "You still look at the stars," she said softly. "Why?" Ethan turned his head, meeting her gaze without hesitation. "Because they are there," he said. "They are constant. They remind me that life continues even in darkness." Avelra considered this. The Zenari measured time by conquest and power, not by beauty or wonder. Yet this human found meaning in something as simple as the stars. Something inside her stirred, a feeling she had long thought foreign and useless. "You speak strangely," she said. "Most beings focus on survival. You focus on reflection. Why?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Because survival is not enough. If you only live to survive, then what is the point? Life is more than breathing, more than fighting, more than dominating. Life is about what you do with the time you have." The Queen studied him in silence. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever questioned her purpose or the way she lived. She had conquered worlds, destroyed fleets, and crushed rebellions, and yet standing before this human she felt uncertain. Over the next several days, Avelra returned frequently. She asked him about Earth, about humans, and about his life before the war. Ethan answered patiently. He did not exaggerate. He did not plead for mercy. He simply spoke the truth as he knew it. He told her about the forests of Earth where sunlight fell in golden beams through thick leaves. He spoke of oceans, endless and deep, where waves danced under the sun. He told her about mountains that reached above the clouds and deserts where silence was so deep it felt alive. Avelra listened, silently absorbing his words. She had seen beauty before, but nothing like what he described. The universe, she realized, was bigger than her control, bigger than her power, bigger than the empire she ruled, and humans, fragile as they were, cherished it. One day she asked him a question that had been growing in her mind. "If your people are so small, so weak, why do they fight? Why risk everything for something they might never keep?" Ethan leaned back, considering her question. "Because some things are worth more than survival," he said. "Freedom, hope, family, dreams. If we give up those things, we are already dead, no matter how long we live." The Queen tilted her head. "You value what is not tangible. Power cannot protect it. Weapons cannot hold it. How do you defend what cannot be defended?" He looked at her calmly. "You do not defend it with strength alone. You defend it by fighting for it. Even when defeat seems certain, you defend it by believing it is worth saving." Avelra found herself quietly studying him. He spoke as if he were teaching, but without arrogance. He spoke as if his life depended on something invisible, something bigger than fear, bigger than pain. He was alive in a way she could not understand. The guards who observed these meetings were confused. One of them whispered to another, "Your Majesty spends hours with this human. He is only a prisoner. Why waste your time?" Avelra did not answer, but inside she felt that the human was teaching her something no book, no conquest, no triumph ever could. As the days turned into weeks, the Queen allowed Ethan small freedoms. He could walk within his cell, touch the walls, look at the stars. He was given food without ceremony, yet he ate with patience and moderation. He did not complain. He did not beg. He simply existed with quiet dignity, as if his presence alone were a statement. One evening she entered the chamber as he watched the stars. The room was dim, filled with the hum of the ship's engines. "Tell me," she said, "what would you do if you could not win? If your world was gone, your people dead?" Ethan did not look away. He considered her words before replying. "Then I would survive," he said. "Not to conquer, not to dominate, but to continue, to remember, to honor those who are gone, to protect what is left. That is how humans endure, even in the worst circumstances." Avelra frowned. "You speak of honor. But what is honor to a creature who is doomed? What is it worth when all is lost?" "Everything," Ethan said simply. "Because honor is what separates life from mere existence. It is what makes us human. It is what allows us to rise again no matter how many times we fall." The Queen was silent. His words were simple, yet they carried a weight that no fleet or weapon could match. She had spent decades conquering, yet she had never felt the power of ideas spoken with such quiet confidence. Over the following weeks, Avalra found herself thinking about Ethan constantly. She wondered how he could remain so calm in the face of death. She wondered how a species so fragile could survive against beings so powerful. She wondered what it was in humans that made them fight when all hope seemed lost. She began asking him more personal questions about his life before the war. Ethan spoke of small towns, of schools, of families and friends. He spoke of simple pleasures, the smell of fresh bread, the laughter of children, the quiet of a morning before the world wakes. Each time he spoke, the Queen felt a strange longing, as if she were glimpsing a world she had never known, a world she had never allowed herself to imagine. "You speak of beauty as if it is alive," she said one day. "How can something so fragile hold such power over beings like you?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Because it is not the beauty that holds us. It is what it represents. Life, hope, the possibility of something better. We fight for it because it reminds us why we are here, why we matter." The Queen looked away. Her golden eyes were distant, reflective. She had ruled countless worlds, commanded countless soldiers, and yet she had never considered what it truly meant to matter. Ethan's words planted a seed of thought she could not yet name. One night, a messenger came to her chambers reporting that the human fleet had regrouped and prepared for a counterattack. The Zinari High Council expected her to order an immediate strike, to crush the human survivors once and for all. The council demanded swift action, claiming that hesitation was weakness. But Avelra did not answer. She thought of Ethan's words. She thought of his calm, his honor, his defiance. She thought of the hope he carried even as a prisoner. And she realized something that shook her deeply. Strength was not only in weapons or fleets. Strength could be in courage and persistence, in the refusal to surrender, even when the odds were impossible. The following morning, she returned to Ethan's chamber. He looked up, curious but calm. "Your Majesty," he said, "you seem different today." Avelra studied him, searching for any sign of weakness, but there was none, only the quiet, unwavering presence that had begun to unsettle her so profoundly. "Perhaps I am learning something," she said. "Perhaps you are teaching me, human, though you do not know it." Ethan inclined his head. "Perhaps. But if you truly want to understand, you must do more than listen. You must see and you must feel. You must look beyond power and conquest, beyond fear and control, and recognize what truly matters." Avelra said nothing. She left the chamber silently, her mind full of thoughts she could not yet organize. For the first time, she realized that this human prisoner, captured and powerless, might hold a lesson that no empire or army could teach. Days turned into weeks, and their conversations became a strange routine. She came with questions, he gave answers. Sometimes they spoke of the war, sometimes of simple human things. And each time Avelra found herself more fascinated, more unsettled, more drawn to the quiet strength of a being she had once considered insignificant. The Zinari officers began to notice. Whispers spread through the halls of the Vailtra. The Queen spends hours with the human, listening to him, speaking with him. Some of the council began to worry. Some believed the Queen was losing her grip on the empire, but Avelra did not care. She was learning something far more important, that courage, hope, and defiance could exist even in the smallest of beings. And that knowledge was more powerful than any weapon she commanded. And so the days passed, the stars turning endlessly outside the ship. Ethan remained calm, observing, speaking when necessary, never begging, never breaking. And Avelra found herself drawn into his world, into the small but powerful human perspective that challenged everything she thought she knew. For the first time in her life, the Queen did not feel certain. For the first time, she wondered whether victory and power were truly the ultimate measure of worth, and for the first time, she began to see a glimmer of something else. Something she could not yet name. But that had begun to change her from the inside out. In the endless silence of space, two beings, human and alien, prisoner and queen, had begun a dialogue that would shape the fate of worlds. And neither fully understood the power of the bond that was forming. The High Council of the Zinari Empire had grown restless. Queen Avelra spent more time with the human prisoner than with her advisors, and murmurs of discontent ran through the halls of the flagship Vailtra. To the generals and ministers, Ethan Cole was insignificant. A human soldier alone and unarmed should not hold their queen's attention. And yet she sought him out constantly, asking questions, listening, and sometimes even smiling at his words. One morning, as the council gathered in the great chamber, Commander Thalric, a senior officer, could no longer contain his frustration. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice sharp, this prisoner, occupies too much of your time. We are at war. Our fleets wait for orders. Entire worlds are at stake. Why waste energy on one insignificant creature?" Avalra's golden eyes glimmered in the bright light of the chamber. "Because," she said softly, "this human is teaching me something no book, no fleet, and no conquest ever could. He reminds me of what it means to truly live." The council erupted in murmurs. Thalric stepped forward, anger flashing in his eyes. "What nonsense is this? He is a human. He is our prisoner. You waste your power, your authority, and your time. If we continue this way, the humans will see weakness in our leadership. They will exploit it, and the Empire will fall." Avelra's voice sharpened. "And yet they continue to fight. Even when death seems certain, they refuse to surrender. Why is that?" The council fell silent. No one could answer her question, and Avelra knew that. She had seen humans in battle. She had seen them die, and she had seen them rise again, time and time again. They fought not because they could win every time, but because something inside them would not allow them to stop. Commander Thalric pressed on. "Your Majesty, they are weak. Their fleets are scattered, their planets destroyed. You cannot learn anything from them that will strengthen our empire. If you continue to spend time with this human, you endanger everything we have built." Avalra's expression was calm, almost unreadable. "Perhaps strength is not always measured by power alone," she said. "Perhaps it is measured by courage, by hope, and by the refusal to yield when everything seems lost." The generals were stunned. Avalra had never spoken like this in council. Her words challenged centuries of Zinari philosophy. Their empire had been built on domination, fear, and absolute control. And yet, here was their queen, questioning everything. After the meeting, Avelra returned to Ethan's chamber. He was sitting on the floor, as always, calm and patient. The hum of the ship's engines filled the silence between them. "They do not understand," she said, almost to herself. "They cannot see what you see. They cannot hear what you hear. They are blind to the meaning behind survival." Ethan looked at her with his steady eyes. "And yet they follow you," he said simply. "They respect your orders. That is also strength in its own way. But even the strongest can learn something new. Even queens can be challenged." Avelra's lips curved slightly. "And what have I learned, human?" "That life is worth more than power," Ethan said. "That sometimes saving lives can be more important than conquering worlds. That even a small being, when brave and determined, can teach giants to see differently." Avelra was silent for a long moment. His words were simple, yet they carried a weight heavier than any weapon in her fleet. He had no ship, no army, no authority, and yet he had already influenced her, changed the way she thought, and questioned everything she had believed. Days later, news came that a small human colony had been detected near the edge of Zinari space. The High Council demanded immediate destruction. It was a simple, ruthless strategy: strike fast, strike hard, and leave nothing behind. The Council assumed the Queen would follow their orders. But Avelra hesitated. She thought of Ethan. She thought of the courage he carried, the hope he refused to abandon. And she realized something that startled even herself. She could not bring herself to give the order to destroy the colony. The Council noticed her hesitation. Commander Thalric confronted her once again. "Your Majesty, the humans will interpret your delay as weakness. Do you intend to abandon your duty for sentiment?" Avalra's golden eyes met his. "Perhaps duty is not only in obedience. Perhaps duty is also in understanding what is right. And sometimes what is right is not what is expected, but what is just." Thalric's face darkened. "Justice. You speak of justice as if it matters to the cosmos. The humans have already killed, destroyed, and resisted. They are weak. They are doomed. And yet you hesitate." Avalra did not answer immediately. She turned away, leaving the council in stunned silence. For the first time, a queen of the Zinari had chosen to consider mercy over conquest. That night, she returned to Ethan's chamber. He was sitting quietly, his hands resting on his knees, looking out at the stars. "Your council is angry," he said. "They do not understand you. They think you are weak." "I am not weak," Avelra said softly. "I am learning, and learning can be mistaken for weakness by those who cannot see." Ethan nodded. "Then you are strong in a way they cannot measure. They can measure fleets, weapons, planets, but they cannot measure heart. and that is what matters most." The queen considered his words carefully. She had ruled for decades, crushing planets, destroying fleets, and enforcing obedience. And yet, here was a human, a prisoner, teaching her something she had never known. Over the next days, Avalra visited him constantly. They spoke about strategy, about life, and about hope. Ethan told her about humans who had resisted impossible odds, about leaders who had inspired their people through courage rather than fear. He told her stories of bravery, sacrifice, and determination. One story in particular stayed with her. It was about a small village on Earth that had been surrounded by an enemy force. The villagers had no weapons, no soldiers, and almost no chance of survival. But they refused to surrender. They worked together, helped each other, and somehow managed to escape. It was not strength, Ethan explained. It was courage, and courage is something even the mighty can learn from. Avalra remained silent, her mind racing. She realized that this human, small and fragile as he was, embodied a kind of strength she had never recognized. It was quiet, persistent, and unstoppable. It was not measured in weapons or fleets, but in spirit. The High Council became more insistent. They demanded that she issue orders, strike against the humans, and demonstrate the Empire's power. But Avalra delayed. She could not ignore the lesson she had begun to learn from her prisoner. She began to question the old ways, the constant drive for domination, the endless wars of conquest. One evening, as the ship drifted through the cold emptiness of space, Avalra returned to Ethan. She found him looking out at the stars as he always did. "Do you believe I can change?" she asked quietly. Ethan turned to her. "I believe anyone can change," he said. "Even the strongest, even the most powerful, even the most feared. It only takes courage and choice." Avalra considered his words. She had spent decades ruling through fear, expecting obedience and loyalty, but she had never truly understood what it meant to lead through understanding, through compassion, through wisdom. And now, through this human prisoner, she was beginning to see a new way. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a world where humans were not just enemies to be destroyed, but beings whose courage and spirit could be respected. She imagined a universe where strength was not measured only by power, but by character. The bond between the queen and her prisoner grew stronger, though neither fully understood it. It was not friendship and it was not loyalty. It was something deeper, a recognition of worth, of strength, of courage. Ethan Cole, with nothing but his quiet defiance and simple honesty, had begun to teach the queen what it truly meant to lead and what it truly meant to live. The days turned into weeks, and the question of the human colony remained unresolved. Avalra's hesitation angered the council, but she remained steadfast. She visited Ethan constantly, asking questions, listening to his thoughts, and considering the lessons he had to offer. One afternoon, as they spoke quietly, Ethan said something that made her pause. "Your Majesty," he said, "you do not need to conquer everything to be strong. You only need to choose what is right, even if it goes against what everyone else expects." Avalra's eyes glimmered. His words were simple, yet they carried more weight than any weapon or fleet. For the first time in her life, she considered that strength might not be about control, but about choice. The council continued to pressure her. The humans remained a threat, and the Empire's power still loomed large. But inside the queen, a change was occurring. She had begun to see the universe not only as a place to dominate, but as a place where courage, hope, and the will to survive mattered. And through it all, Ethan Cole remained calm. He never begged, never pleaded, never demanded. He simply existed, quietly teaching the queen that even the smallest beings could hold the greatest lessons. For the first time, Queen Avalra was uncertain. For the first time, she wondered whether power was the ultimate measure of worth. And for the first time, she began to realize that the human before her, fragile and alone, might hold the key to a new way of thinking, a new way of ruling, a new way of living. In the endless void of space, aboard the flagship Velthra, two beings, one queen, one human, stood at the beginning of a change that neither fully understood. The war continued outside, but aboard the Zenari flagship Velthra, a different kind of battle was taking place, a battle within Queen Avalra herself. The council demanded action. The human colonies on the edge of Zenari space had been located, and the generals expected immediate destruction. Yet the queen delayed. She could not bring herself to order their annihilation. She walked through the long metallic corridors of her ship, the hum of engines echoing in the silence. Her mind was heavy with thoughts. The words of Ethan Cole repeated endlessly in her head. You do not need to conquer everything to be strong. You only need to choose what is right, even if it goes against what everyone else expects. The council would not understand. They could not see strength in mercy. They measured it in fleets, weapons, and obedience. But the human had shown her another kind of strength, a quiet, unyielding courage that refused to break under fear, under pain, under hopelessness. When she reached Ethan's chamber, he was sitting calmly as always, looking out at the stars. His eyes met hers, steady and unafraid. You seem troubled, he said. Avelra took a deep breath. I must make a choice, Ethan. One that will defy my counsel and challenge everything I have known. And yet, I fear it may be the right choice. Ethan looked at her carefully. And what is the choice? To destroy the humans or to spare them, she said quietly. The council expects me to crush them. My fleet is ready. The weapons are prepared. I could end them all in a single strike. And yet you hesitate, Ethan said gently. Because you see something they cannot. You see what they fight for. You see why life matters even to those you consider enemies. Avelra studied him in silence. The calmness in his voice, the certainty in his eyes was a stark contrast to the storm raging inside her. The council demanded obedience. Duty demanded destruction. Yet her heart, her mind, and now her conscience urged restraint. That evening she called a meeting with her council. The generals, the ministers, the advisors, they all gathered in the great chamber waiting for her command. Commander Thalric stepped forward, his face sharp with anger. Your Majesty, he said, the humans wait for your decision. Shall we strike now while their defenses are weak? Avelra's golden eyes swept over the council. The humans are alive and their lives are not meaningless. I will not strike blindly, nor will I destroy them without consideration. Thalric's expression twisted with disbelief. You would risk our empire's strength for, what, mercy? Mercy is not weakness, Avelra said firmly. It is strength. True strength lies in understanding, in choice, in courage. And I have seen that strength in a human you call insignificant. The council erupted in whispers and shouts. Some officers banged on the tables in frustration. Some stormed out of the chamber, muttering of treason and foolishness. Thalric, however, stayed, his eyes fixed on her. Your Majesty, if you do not command the fleet to strike, the council will act without you. Do you understand what that means? Avelra's gaze did not waver. I understand. And yet I will not act against what I believe is right. Thalric's jaw tightened. Then you leave the Empire vulnerable. Perhaps vulnerability is the price of wisdom, Avelra replied. With that, she left the chamber. The council was left in stunned silence. For the first time, a Zainari queen had chosen deliberation over immediate conquest, mercy over blind obedience. That night she returned to Ethan. He was sitting quietly, as always, watching the stars. They are angry, he said softly. They do not understand your choice. Avelra sat beside him, her posture tense. I know they believe mercy is weakness. They will try to force my hand. But I cannot destroy them, not when I see what they fight for, not when I see the courage in their struggle. Ethan nodded. Then you are strong, stronger than anyone around you realizes. You have the courage to stand against your own people, against your own council, and follow what is right. The queen's mind turned to the humans on the edge of her empire. They were unaware of the decision she was making. They had no idea that their fate rested in the hands of one human soldier and one alien queen. The thought was heavy, almost unbearable. She could not imagine giving the order to destroy them, and yet she had to consider the consequences if she did not. Days passed, and Avelra observed the human fleet quietly. She learned from Ethan how humans adapted, how they strategized, how they survived impossible situations. She realized that their courage and persistence made them stronger than any Zainari fleet in a different way. They were unpredictable, resilient, and capable of hope when all seemed lost. During one visit, Ethan spoke about the human's ability to forgive. Even when we fight, even when we lose, we can forgive. That is why we endure. That is why we continue. Even in the worst times, we remember that life has value, even for those we call enemies. Avelra considered his words. The Zainari had never forgiven. They conquered, destroyed, and moved on. Mercy was a foreign concept. And yet the human before her taught her that mercy could be a weapon more powerful than fleets, more powerful than armies, more powerful than fear. The council grew impatient. Messages arrived daily urging her to act. The generals threatened mutiny, but Avelra remained steadfast. She knew she could not betray her conscience no matter the cost. She knew that if she gave the order to destroy the humans, she would betray not only them but herself. One night, she walked through the corridors of her ship, her mind restless. The stars outside were bright and distant. She stopped at the observation deck, looking out at the galaxy, and thought of Ethan. The human had shown her a world beyond power and conquest, a world where courage, hope, and choice mattered. She remembered his calm voice, his steady eyes, his unwavering belief in the value of life. She realized that he had not come to teach her lessons with force. He had only lived, and in living he had shown her the power of humanity. When she returned to Ethan's chamber, he looked up at her with a quiet smile. "Have you decided?" he asked. Avelra nodded slowly. "Yes, I will not destroy them. I will not give the order to strike. Instead, I will spare the humans and offer them a chance to survive." Ethan's eyes widened slightly, then softened. "That is the right choice," he said. "It will not be easy. Your council will resist. Your generals will try to stop you, but you are strong enough to stand against them." Avelra's gaze fell on him. She realized that he had given her the courage to make this decision, to stand alone if necessary, to follow her conscience instead of fear. "You have changed me," she said softly. "Perhaps more than anyone else ever has." Ethan shook his head. "I only did what I could. You chose to listen. You chose to learn. That is what makes the difference." The next morning, Avelra summoned the fleet commanders. Her voice was steady, commanding, and filled with authority. "Prepare the fleet," she said, "but do not attack. The humans are to be spared. Their lives are not meaningless. We will give them a chance to survive. That is my command." Shock rippled through the room. The commanders exchanged glances, unsure if they had heard correctly. Commander Thalric stepped forward, his expression dark. "Your Majesty, this is madness." "You are defying the Council, the Empire, and tradition. Are you certain?" Avelra's golden eyes met his. "I am certain. The humans have value. Their courage, their hope, their spirit, these are things we cannot conquer. We cannot destroy them without losing something far greater than fleets or territory. Obey my command or leave this room. The choice is yours." Thalric's jaw tightened. He stared at her for a long moment, then bowed stiffly. "As you command, Your Majesty." The other commanders nodded, some reluctantly, some with curiosity. For the first time in decades, the Zenari fleet did not attack when ordered. They waited. They followed the Queen's command even if they did not understand it. Back in his chamber, Ethan watched her with quiet respect. "You have done what few could," he said softly. "You have chosen life over power, mercy over conquest. That is courage." Avelra smiled faintly. "I have learned from you, Ethan Cole. Your strength has shown me a way I never knew existed. Perhaps I am not the same queen I was yesterday." Ethan nodded. "No one who sees the world as it is, who understands what life truly means, remains the same. Even queens." For the first time, Avelra felt a strange peace. The Council might resist. The humans might not trust her, but she had made a choice that aligned with her conscience. And she had done it because a single human had shown her what true courage looked like. The stars outside stretched endlessly, distant and cold, yet filled with possibility. A human soldier and an alien queen had begun to rewrite the future, not with weapons, not with fleets, but with understanding, courage, and the simple truth that life, in all its forms, was worth fighting for. And as she watched Ethan, calm and unyielding, she realized that the universe might be larger than she had ever imagined, and that even the smallest beings could hold the power to change empires. For the first time in her life, Queen Avelra was not certain of victory. She was certain of something greater, that the right choice, the courageous choice, could change everything. The decision had been made. Queen Avelra's fleet held its position, weapons silent, energy shields glowing but unused. The human colonies at the edge of Zenari space remained untouched, their small worlds spinning peacefully in the distant stars, unaware of the crisis that had passed. Inside the flagship Vaelthra, the atmosphere was tense. The Council murmured among themselves, uncertain of what the Queen's mercy would bring. Commander Thalric had not left her side since the announcement, though he said little. Even he had to admit that the human survival would prove something, though he did not yet know what. Avelra walked through the corridors to Ethan's chamber. He was sitting quietly, looking out at the distant stars. She paused at the entrance, studying him. He looked calm, as if nothing had changed, but she knew better. Nothing about the past weeks had been ordinary. You were right, she said softly. Life, courage, hope. They are stronger than fleets, stronger than weapons, stronger than fear. I see that now. And I see it because of you. Ethan looked at her, his dark eyes steady. It was always there, Your Majesty. I only reminded you to notice it. The humans fight because they believe in something beyond survival. They fight for life itself. You have given them a chance to continue. The Queen nodded slowly. For the first time in her life, she felt that her power was not in fear or destruction, but in choice. In the power to decide what is right, even if it goes against expectation, tradition, or even empire. Outside, the stars seemed brighter. Perhaps it was only in her mind, or perhaps the universe itself had taken notice. The human colonies were alive, and in their survival, a new possibility had been born. The council remained divided. Some whispered of weakness, some spoke cautiously of admiration, and some simply waited for the humans to make a move. But the Queen was certain. She had made her choice. She had learned a lesson from a human who refused to break, and that lesson would shape her empire. Days passed, and the humans' response came. Small scouting ships approached the edge of Zinari space, cautious but alive. They were wary of traps, aware that the aliens might strike despite the Queen's orders. But the ships were not destroyed. The humans were alive, and in that survival they began to hope. Ethan watched the approaching ships with a quiet satisfaction. They will understand soon, he said. Your mercy will speak louder than any message or weapon. Avelra studied him. They will see that I did not act as an enemy, that I chose life, that I chose hope. The human fleet hesitated at the edge of Zinari territory. They scanned for traps, scanning for any sign of aggression. When none came, they relaxed slightly. The humans' leaders communicated cautiously, sending messages into the void. Their words were measured, respectful and cautious, but alive. And somewhere inside that communication, hope was reborn. The humans realized that they had survived not because of luck or skill alone, but because one human, one queen had seen the value in life itself. On the Valthra, Avelra stood beside Ethan as the first transmissions arrived. She read the messages carefully. The humans were wary but not hostile. They thanked her for sparing their worlds, expressing cautious hope that peace might exist even between enemies. For the first time, Avelra felt a deep satisfaction. Not the satisfaction of conquest, but the satisfaction of making a choice that mattered. The Zinari Empire had not struck, and yet strength had been demonstrated, not in destruction, but in wisdom. The council was still uneasy. Commander Thalric approached, his expression unreadable. Your Majesty, he said slowly, the humans are alive. They will remember this. They may even respect your choice. I cannot deny that you acted with wisdom, but your mercy could be seen as weakness by others. Avelra's golden eyes met his. Wisdom and mercy are not weakness, Thalric. They are courage, and sometimes courage must be stronger than fleets, stronger than weapons, stronger than fear. The humans have survived because I chose courage. They will learn to respect life, and perhaps in time even us. Thalric said nothing, only nodded slightly. Even he could not deny the truth in her words. Weeks passed, and the humans cautiously approached the edges of Zinari space. Communication increased. Small trade and messages of peace began to flow. Ethan watched all of it quietly, his calm presence a constant reminder to the Queen that even a single being could make a difference. You changed everything, he said one day. As they watched the human scouts move cautiously among the stars, Avelra shook her head. No, Ethan, you changed me. I only had the courage to follow the lesson you showed me. He smiled faintly. Then it was always your choice. You only needed to see it. Avelra considered this. For decades, she had believed that power alone defined strength. She had crushed rebellion, destroyed fleets, and ruled with an iron hand. But now she understood that true strength was more than power. It was courage, compassion, and the ability to act rightly even when no one else agreed. The human colonies began to flourish under this new reality. They rebuilt their worlds, repaired their ships, and shared resources with one another. And while the Zinari Empire still held its power, the humans had survived. Not through conquest or dominance, but through life itself. The Queen continued her visits to Ethan's chamber. They spoke less about strategy now and more about life, about philosophy, and about hope. He told her stories of human survival, of courage that defied the odds, and of dreams that refused to die even in darkness. "You have made me see a different universe," Avelra said one evening, her gaze fixed on the stars. "A universe where even the smallest beings matter. A universe where courage can be stronger than fleets, where hope can survive even in the darkest places." Ethan nodded. "It has always been there, Your Majesty. You only needed to see it, and now you do." Avelra looked at him, golden eyes shining with gratitude. "You risked nothing to teach me, and yet you changed everything. Perhaps humanity is stronger than I thought, not just in battle, but in spirit." He smiled faintly. "That is how humans endure. We fight, we hope, we survive, and sometimes we teach others along the way, even without knowing it." The stars stretched endlessly outside the ship, a reminder of the vast universe they both inhabited. In those stars, both human and Xynari saw the potential for life, for hope, for courage. And in that potential, the first seeds of peace had been planted. Months passed. The human colonies grew stronger. The Xynari fleet remained vigilant but no longer aggressive. A delicate balance existed between them, founded on respect and understanding rather than fear. And throughout it all, the bond between Ethan Cole and Queen Avelra remained, quiet but unbreakable. One day the council approached her with a proposal. "Your Majesty," one minister said, "the humans send an invitation. They wish to meet, to discuss relations, trade, and perhaps peace." Avelra considered the request carefully. For decades, the Xynari had known only war. Diplomacy was a foreign concept, and yet here was an opportunity to test the lessons she had learned, the lessons that a single human had shown her. "I accept," she said finally. "We will meet them. We will talk, and we will see what can be built, not through conquest but through understanding." Ethan smiled, quietly proud. "Your choice will be remembered, Your Majesty. You have not only spared lives but shown a new way forward. Perhaps this is the start of something greater than either of our worlds have known." Avelra nodded. For the first time she felt truly at peace. She had faced the expectations of her council, the demands of her empire, and the weight of centuries of tradition, and she had made a choice that honored life, courage, and hope. The human fleet approached the Veilthra cautiously. Small ships moved forward, scanning, waiting, and when the first humans finally set foot on Xynari territory, they were met not with weapons, not with fear, but with the calm presence of a queen who had learned to see beyond conquest, and a soldier who had reminded her of the strength of life itself. The humans were wary, but trust began to grow. They saw the queen's choice not as weakness, but as courage. They understood that she had risked everything to preserve life, to offer hope, and to show that even enemies could choose peace. Avelra met Ethan in the grand observation chamber. The humans were outside, cautious but alive, and in that moment she realized the truth he had always shown her. Courage, hope, and life were more powerful than any fleet, any weapon, any empire. "You taught me everything," she said quietly. Ethan shook his head. "You learned it. That was your choice, and that is what makes you a true queen." The stars stretched endlessly before them, distant and cold, yet alive with possibility. And in that endless expanse, a human soldier and an alien queen had rewritten the story of the universe. Not with war, not with power, but with courage, hope, and the quiet strength of life itself. And for the first time, the alien queen understood what it truly meant to be alive, and what it truly meant to lead.